The Dominion Combat Academy, floating in the dead space between sectors, had a reputation for breaking recruits. Not metaphorically breaking them in that cute, motivational way where you tear someone down to build them back up stronger. No, this place actually broke people. Bones, spirits. Occasionally entire career trajectories. The station designated Forge 7 had been engineered by the Torvenix Collective approximately 3 centuries prior, back when the galaxy still pretended that military might and diplomatic posturing were two separate things. They were not. They had never been. And Forge 7 existed as a monument to that uncomfortable truth. The station itself was a marvel of unnecessary intimidation. 16 kilometers of reinforced Durali hull configured in a shape that someone with a degree in aggressive architecture had decided looked sufficiently menacing. It rotated slowly, generating approximately 0.6 standard gravities through centrifugal force, which the designers insisted was the optimal environment for cross-species combat training. The real reason was that 0.6 G was the comfort zone for Crovalians, and Crovalians had designed the place, so there you had it. Democracy in action. Inside this monument to martial excess, representatives from 47 different species currently suffered through what the brochure optimistically called basic combat fundamentals. The Torvenix themselves, naturally, excelled at everything. Their forearms and triple-jointed legs gave them advantages that bordered on showing off. The Heffrony lumbered through exercises with the casual confidence of beings whose home world gravity was twice what Forge 7 offered, making them functionally superhuman by station standards. Even the Quilxari, who looked like someone had given a praying mantis ideas above its station, possessed reflexes that made them dangerous in close quarters. And then there were the humans. Humans had joined the galactic community roughly 40 standard cycles ago, through a series of events that historians still argued about, mostly because the humans kept changing their story depending on who was buying drinks. They had been classified as a Category 7 species, which in the Dominion's elaborate taxonomical system meant technologically interesting but physically disappointing. Their home world, a little planet they called Earth with charming provincialism, orbited an unremarkable yellow star in an unfashionable arm of the galaxy. Initial surveys had noted oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, liquid water, and a disturbing abundance of species that seemed designed specifically to kill each other. The humans themselves appeared to be the planet's apology for all that violence. Soft skin that tore if you looked at it wrong. No natural armor plating, no venom sacs, no fangs worth mentioning. They had barely any hair, walked on only 2 legs like some kind of evolutionary dare, and their sensory organs were so limited it was frankly embarrassing. The Dominion assessment team had actually felt bad for them. That assessment was why Private Takeshi Reeves found himself standing in Formation Bay 7, being stared at by 37 aliens, who looked like they could tear him apart without pausing their breakfast. Takeshi had joined the Terran Defense Initiative 6 months prior for reasons that seemed significantly less compelling now than they had during the recruitment presentation. The recruiter had emphasized adventure, competitive salary, and the opportunity to represent humanity among the stars. The recruiter had not mentioned that representing humanity would feel quite this much like being a pet hamster in a room full of curious cats. The other human recruits had been distributed across different training cohorts, which Takeshi suspected was intentional. Some bureaucrat somewhere had decided that clustering humans together would make them too easy a target for mockery. Spreading them out meant they could be mocked more efficiently across multiple groups. Brilliant strategy, really. Attention. The voice hit like a physical force, which made sense because it came from Senior Instructor Vorak, who was himself a physical force. Vorak belonged to the Crovalian species, which meant he stood roughly 8 feet tall, possessed musculature that looked like it had been sculpted by an angry god with something to prove, and had skin that resembled granite that had decided to get into bodybuilding. His face was all sharp angles and aggressive bone structure, with eyes that glowed a faint amber in the station's artificial lighting. Those eyes currently swept across the assembled recruits with the warm affection of a tax auditor reviewing questionable deductions. "Welcome to Week 4, Vorak announced, his voice carrying the kind of sardonic enthusiasm usually reserved for root canals. "You miserable collection of genetic accidents have somehow survived 3 weeks without dying, which I suppose represents a new low for Academy standards. Today we begin practical grip strength assessment and close quarters combat dynamics." Takeshi kept his expression carefully neutral. 3 weeks at Forge 7 had taught him that reacting to anything Vorak said was an invitation for personal attention, and personal attention from Vorak was like personal attention from a meteor strike. Vorak began pacing, his footsteps heavy enough to feel through the deck plating. Grip strength is foundational to combat effectiveness. Your ability to maintain weapon retention, execute grappling techniques, and resist disarmament procedures all depend on your capacity to hold onto things when physics and your enemies both want you to let go. He paused for effect. "Some of you will excel at this. You know who you are." His eyes found the Torvenix recruit, a 4-armed specimen named Krevix, who had been insufferable about his natural advantages. Krevix preened visibly. "Some of you will perform adequately." Vorak's gaze swept across the HFY and several other species that met with his apparent approval. "And some of you." His eyes locked onto Takeshi with the precision of a weapons targeting system. "Some of you will provide the rest of us with entertainment as you fail in ways that would embarrass your ancestors." Several recruits laughed. Not sympathetic laughter. Not even particularly creative laughter. Just the automatic sycophantic chuckling of people who wanted to be on the instructor's good side. Takeshi said nothing. He had learned this too. Silence was armor. Vorak gestured toward the training posts arranged in neat rows across the bay. Each post stood roughly 7 feet tall, constructed from compressed carbon lattice composite designed to withstand significant force. They were cylindrical, about 8 inches in diameter, and embedded in deck sockets that held them rigidly in place. The posts were marked with measurement rings that changed color under pressure, providing real-time feedback on grip force. Standard training equipment. Unremarkable, except for the fact that they would apparently be the instrument of Takeshi's impending humiliation. "The assessment is simple," Vorak continued. "You will approach your assigned post. You will grip it with maximum force. The chromatic sensors will measure your output in standard force units. Anything above 800 units is considered combat effective. Below 500 is." He smiled, showing teeth that looked like they had been designed by a committee focused exclusively on intimidation. "Below 500 is what we call a liability." The first recruit up was Krevix, who approached his post with the swagger of someone who had never encountered meaningful adversity. All 4 of his hands wrapped around the post simultaneously, and his arms flexed with theatrical excess. The measurement rings flared through yellow, orange, and into a deep crimson that indicated serious force. The display panel read 1,340 units. Vorak nodded approvingly. "Acceptable. Acceptable." 1,400 units was apparently just acceptable. Takeshi felt his stomach sink incrementally lower. The HFY recruit went next, a thick-bodied individual named Morgan, whose species evolved under crushing gravity. Morgan gripped the post almost casually with 2 shovel-sized hands, and the sensors registered 1,580 units. He released the post with a satisfied grunt and returned to formation without fanfare. One by one, the recruits demonstrated their grip strength. Even the Quelsery, with their insectoid physiology, managed 920 units through some combination of leverage and biological weirdness. Every single recruit exceeded the 800-unit threshold, some comfortably, others barely. But all of them cleared it. All of them except the human, obviously. When Takeshi's turn finally arrived, the atmosphere in the bay had shifted into something resembling a stadium awaiting a particularly gruesome sporting event. Vorak's expression had arranged itself into what might charitably be called anticipation, but more accurately resembled the look a predator gets when its lunch walks directly into its mouth. "Private Reeves," Vorak said, his voice dripping with a sarcasm so thick you could probably bottle it and sell it as a condiment. "Please approach your assigned post and demonstrate for us the legendary might of humanity." Takeshi walked to his post. He was aware of every eye in the bay tracking his movement. The post stood there, silent and cylindrical and completely indifferent to the theater unfolding around it. He reached out and wrapped both hands around the post. The material was cool under his palms, slightly textured to prevent slippage. He adjusted his grip slightly, finding a comfortable position. "Oh, by all means. Take your time," Vorak said from behind him. "Perhaps you need to warm up. Some light stretching. A motivational speech about believing in yourself." More laughter from the wine gallery. Takeshi tuned it out. "Whenever you are ready." Private. "Apply maximum force. Try not to hurt yourself." Takeshi squeezed. The sensation was strange. On Earth, under full gravity, this would have felt normal. Here, in 0.6 g, everything felt light, almost floaty. His muscles, accustomed to fighting Earth's gravity with every movement, found the station's reduced gravitational field almost trivially easy to work against. It was like spending your whole life wearing weighted clothing and then suddenly taking it off. He squeezed harder. The measurement rings began cycling through their colors. Green, yellow, orange. The display ticked upward. 600 units, 700. "Come now, Private," Vorak said, his voice taking on an edge of theatrical impatience. "We do not have all day. Apply maximum force. Or is this your maximum? Is 700 units where humanity peaks? How disappointing." Takeshi squeezed harder still. 800 units. 900. The laughter had stopped. Takeshi noticed this peripherally, the way you notice when background noise suddenly cuts out. 1,000 units. "Adequate," Vorak said, but his voice had lost some of its mocking edge. "You may release and return to." Takeshi was not done. He did not know what made him do it. Perhaps it was 3 weeks of accumulated mockery, finally reaching some critical threshold. Perhaps it was the simple human need to occasionally prove a point, even when proving it was tactically inadvisable. Perhaps his hands simply had not received the message that the demonstration was over. He applied what he would have considered full force back on Earth. The kind of grip you used when you absolutely needed something to not escape your grasp. The kind of grip that Earth's gravity and atmospheric pressure and evolutionary history had made normal. The measurement rings flared through their entire spectrum into colors that Takeshi was reasonably certain were not supposed to be in the sequence. The display panel flickered, showing numbers that climbed past 1,500, past 1,800, past 2,000. And then the sound happened. It started as a creak, a small, almost apologetic noise that suggested something was experiencing stress it had not anticipated. Then the creak became a groan. Then the groan became a crack that echoed through Formation Bay 7, with the sharp authority of a gunshot. Takeshi felt the post give way in his hands. Not bend, not flex, give way. The carbon lattice composite, designed to withstand forces that would crumple most biological entities, snapped cleanly in half like someone breaking a stick. The top section of the post clattered to the deck with a sound that seemed unreasonably loud in the sudden silence. Takeshi stood there, holding the bottom half of what had been a training post, staring at it with the expression of someone who had just broken someone else's expensive lamp and was now calculating the replacement cost. The silence in the bay was profound. It was the kind of silence that develops when 37 beings simultaneously question their understanding of physical reality. Vorak recovered first, which made sense given his position and training. His voice, when it emerged, had lost all its theatrical mockery and landed somewhere in the territory of genuine confusion with notes of concerning realization. "What did you just do?" Takeshi carefully released the broken post, which remained upright in its deck socket despite no longer being attached to its upper section. He turned to face Vorak and offered a slight shrug that he hoped conveyed apologetic bewilderment rather than insubordination. "I squeezed it, sir. As instructed. Those posts," Vorak said slowly, "are rated to withstand forces up to 3,000 units before structural failure. The manufacturers guarantee it. They test each post personally before installation." "Yes, sir. The only species in Dominion records capable of exceeding that threshold are the HFY, and only their elite warriors after decades of conditioning." "Yes, sir, you are a human." Yes, sir. Humans are soft-worlders. Your species assessment file describes you as physically inferior to 83% of spacefaring species. The file may contain some inaccuracies. Sir. Vorak's expression cycled through several configurations, none of them entirely readable. He walked slowly toward Takeshi, his footsteps suddenly sounding less intimidating and more cautious. He stopped approximately 2 feet away, which was closer than he had come to Takeshi during the entire 3 weeks of training. Explain, Vorak said flatly. Takeshi took a breath. 3 weeks of being the entertainment had apparently built up some pressure, because what came out was less a formal report and more a lecture delivered with the patience of someone explaining mathematics to a particularly slow child. Earth's gravity is approximately 1 standard g, sir. This station operates at 0.6 standard g. That means everything I do here requires 60% of the force I am accustomed to exerting for the same result. My musculature evolved to function under full Earth gravity. Here, in reduced gravity, I am functionally stronger because I am working against less resistance. Vorak's eyes had narrowed. All species adjust to local gravity. That does not explain Earth's atmospheric pressure is also higher than standard, sir. Approximately 1.2 standard atmospheres at sea level. Higher atmospheric pressure means more oxygen available for cellular respiration, which means more efficient energy production in muscle tissue. It also means my cardiovascular system is accustomed to working harder to circulate blood against greater external pressure. That still does not. Earth is classified as a Category 3 death world. Sir. Takeshi was warming to his subject now. 3 weeks of suppressed commentary flowing out in a steady stream. Our planet has active tectonic systems, extreme weather patterns, and an ecosystem where approximately 90% of macroscopic life is dedicated to killing and eating the other 10%. Humans evolved as persistence predators on a world where almost everything was stronger, faster, or more poisonous than we were. We survived by being durable enough to outlast things that should have killed us and strong enough to drag them home after they collapsed from exhaustion. The bay remained silent. Several recruits had expressions suggesting they were reconsidering previous decisions, possibly including the decision to mock the human. Our bone density is higher than most species because our gravity demands it, Takeshi continued. Our muscle fiber composition includes more fast twitch capacity because our predators were fast and our prey was faster. Our pain tolerance is elevated because on Earth, injuries that would sideline most species were things we just walked off because the alternative was getting eaten. We call it minor discomfort, other species call it requiring medical intervention. Vorak had gone very still. The assessment team tested humans in standard gravity environments under controlled conditions and compared our performance to species optimized for those conditions. Takeshi finished. We looked weak because the tests measured us against benchmarks designed for species that evolved in lighter gravity and thinner atmospheres. We are not weak. We are just differently strong. Someone in the formation made a sound that might have been a nervous laugh or possibly a whimper. Demonstrate, Vorak said abruptly. Sir, your claims require evidence. Break another post. Takeshi glanced at the remaining posts. Sir, with respect, the Academy probably does not want to replace its entire inventory of training equipment. That was not a request, Private. Takeshi walked to another post. This time he gripped it with deliberate care, applying force gradually. The measurement rings climbed through their spectrum again. When they reached the upper limits, he held that pressure steady instead of increasing it further. The post groaned but held. More, Vorak commanded. Takeshi increased the pressure incrementally. The display panel hit 2,500 units. The post's groan became a shriek of stressed materials. Small stress fractures appeared along its surface, visible cracks spreading like ice breaking. More. The post exploded. There was no other word for it. The carbon lattice composite, unable to withstand the forces being applied, failed catastrophically. Shards of material scattered across the deck, pinging off surfaces and causing several recruits to flinch dramatically. Takeshi stood there holding absolutely nothing, his hands covered in a fine dust of pulverized training equipment. Adequate, Vorak said, though his voice had changed entirely. The mocking sardonic edge was gone, replaced by something that sounded uncomfortably like respect mixed with concern. Return to formation. Takeshi did so. The other recruits parted to let him through like he was carrying something contagious. Vorak surveyed the bay, his expression calculating. It appears the assessment protocols require revision. Private Reeves has demonstrated that human baseline strength was incorrectly categorized. He paused, then added with a touch of his former sarcasm, I am certain this revelation will delight the logistics division when they calculate equipment replacement costs. Krevix, who had been so pleased with his 1,340 units earlier, now looked like he was reconsidering his life choices. Several other recruits were staring at Takeshi, with expressions ranging from newfound respect to outright alarm. Instruction will continue, Vorak announced. We will adapt training protocols to account for species-specific variations in baseline capability. Private Reeves, you will report to the quartermaster after formation to provide measurements for heavy resistance. Equipment. The standard gear appears insufficient for your requirements. Yes, sir. The rest of the session proceeded in a markedly different atmosphere. When Vorak announced grappling drills, several recruits suddenly discovered urgent reasons to partner with someone other than the human. Takeshi found himself paired with Morgan, the Heffroni, who approached the partnership with the wary respect of someone handling explosive materials. You squeezed the post until it broke, Morgan said, his voice a deep rumble. Yes, that should not be possible for your species. The assessment was incorrect. What else was the assessment incorrect about? Takeshi considered this. Probably a lot of things. Morgan absorbed this information with visible concern. On my world, we have a saying. The most dangerous opponent is the one you underestimated. We have a similar saying on Earth. It goes, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I do not understand. It means that actions have consequences. And sometimes those consequences are educational. They began the grappling drill. Morgan was stronger in absolute terms, benefiting from his high-gravity evolution. But Takeshi was faster, more flexible, and possessed a leverage efficiency that came from a lifetime of fighting Earth's gravity. The drill ended in a draw, both of them breathing hard. You are difficult to hold, Morgan observed. You are difficult to move. They regarded each other with the mutual respect of people who had just learned important lessons about underestimating others. The remainder of Week 4 proceeded with a fascinating new dynamic. Vorak's instruction style adjusted noticeably. His mockery, previously directed at Takeshi with focused enthusiasm, now distributed itself more evenly across the entire cohort. He still made sarcastic observations, because that appeared to be fundamental to his personality, but the edge had softened, or perhaps redirected. Word spread. Of course, word spread. Forge 7 was a contained environment where gossip traveled faster than light-speed communication. By Week 5, humans throughout the academy were reporting changed attitudes from their instructors and fellow recruits, some positive, some nervous, all different from the dismissive contempt that had characterized the first month. The Dominion Military Command, demonstrating the bureaucratic efficiency for which large organizations are famous, took approximately 6 weeks to officially respond to the grip strength incident. Their response came in the form of revised assessment protocols, updated training equipment specifications, and a tersely worded memorandum suggesting that perhaps initial species evaluations had been somewhat incomplete. Takeshi received a private summons to Vorak's office during Week 7. The office was exactly what you would expect from a Krovalian instructor. Aggressively organized, decorated with weapons that were probably ceremonial but looked fully functional, and featuring furniture that suggested comfort was for the weak. Vorak gestured for Takeshi to sit. Takeshi Saturday, Private Reeves, Vorak began, his voice carrying none of its usual theatrical quality. I owe you an apology. This was unexpected. Takeshi kept his expression neutral. My instruction methods rely on establishing clear hierarchies and performance expectations. Vorak continued. I use mockery and public criticism as motivational tools. This is standard Crevalian military pedagogy, and it has proven effective across multiple species over many years. Yes, sir. It was ineffective with you, because my mockery was based on incorrect assumptions. I treated you as weak when you were merely different. That was poor instruction on my part. Takeshi considered his response carefully. The assessment data was incomplete, sir. You acted on the information available. That is generous of you. Vorak leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his mass. Command has asked me to develop revised training protocols for human recruits. They want specifications for equipment that can withstand human baseline strength. They want gravity adjustment recommendations. They want dietary modifications to account for your metabolic efficiency. That sounds like a lot of work, sir. It is. Which is why you are going to help me. Takeshi blinked. Sir, you are the subject matter expert on being human, private. I need data. Performance metrics under various conditions. Baseline measurements for strength, endurance, reaction time, pain tolerance. Command wants a complete reassessment of human military potential. Vorak's expression might have been a smile, though on a Crevalian face it looked more like a threat display. Congratulations! You have volunteered for extensive testing. I see. The testing will be rigorous. Probably uncomfortable. Definitely time-consuming. But it will ensure that future human recruits receive appropriate training rather than being dismissed as weak when they are simply operating under incorrect assumptions. Takeshi felt something shift in his chest. It took him a moment to identify the sensation as pride. Not personal pride, necessarily, but something broader. Representative pride. I am happy to help, sir. Vorak nodded once, a sharp economical gesture. Good. Report to Assessment Lab 4 tomorrow at 0600 hours. Bring your physical conditioning gear and prepare for a long day. Yes, sir. Dismissed. Takeshi stood, saluted, and turned to leave. Private. He paused at the door. For what it is worth, Vorak said quietly, you are one of the best recruits I have trained in 5 years. Not despite being human. Because of it. Takeshi left the office before he could do something embarrassing like smile too widely. The testing consumed the next 3 weeks. They put him through every assessment protocol in the Dominion manual and several that appeared to be improvised specifically for the occasion. They measured his grip strength under varying gravity conditions. They tested his endurance running until the monitoring staff got bored watching. They documented his reaction time, his pain response, his recovery rate from exhaustion. They even tested his psychological resilience through simulations that were probably not entirely ethical but definitely comprehensive. The data, when compiled, painted a picture that made the initial species assessment look like it had been written by someone who had only read about humans in a particularly incomplete encyclopedia. Humans, it turned out, were extraordinarily good at not dying. Their healing rate was elevated. Their pain tolerance was remarkable. Their psychological stability under stress was unusual. They could operate effectively across a broader range of environmental conditions than most species. They were not the strongest or the fastest or the most specialized, but they were consistently capable across nearly every metric. The report went up through channels, gathering attention and addendums as it climbed. By the time it reached Fleet Command, it had grown from a simple reassessment into a comprehensive analysis of human military potential. The conclusion, buried in approximately 60 pages of technical data and qualifying statements, was succinct. Previous assessments severely underestimated human combat effectiveness. Week 12 brought graduation exercises. Takeshi, along with the 36 other recruits who had survived the full training cycle, assembled in Formation Bay 7 for final evaluations. The bay looked different now. The training posts had been replaced with reinforced models rated to handle significantly higher force levels. Several other equipment modifications had been implemented based on the assessment data. The changes were subtle but present. Vorak addressed the graduating cohort with his characteristic sardonic authority. You miserable collection of barely competent recruits have somehow completed. Basic combat training, without dying or causing me to die from disappointment. This represents a marginal success. Standard Vorak. You will now disperse to your assigned units, where you will attempt to apply what you have learned here. Some of you will excel, some of you will merely survive. And some of you, his eyes found Takeshi. Some of you will probably break expensive equipment and generate lengthy incident reports. The cohort laughed. Actual laughter this time, the kind that included rather than excluded. Vorak continued through the formal graduation protocols, awarding certifications and assignments. When he reached Takeshi's name, he paused. Private Takeshi Reeves, your assignment has been modified. You will remain at Forge 7 as Assistant Training Instructor specializing in human integration protocols. You will help develop and implement the new training standards for human recruits. You will also serve as demonstration subject for cross-species combat dynamics instruction. Takeshi felt his stomach drop slightly. Sir, I did not request an instructor position. You did not request it. Command assigned it. Apparently breaking training equipment and forcing bureaucratic reforms makes you qualified to teach. Vorak's expression might have been amusement. Consider it recognition of your contributions to advancing galactic understanding of human capabilities. Yes, sir. The ceremony concluded. Recruits dispersed to their new assignments, most looking relieved to have survived. Takeshi found himself standing in the now empty formation bay, contemplating his unexpected future. Morgan approached, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. Instructor Reeves. Not officially yet. A technicality. You will be good at it. What makes you say that? You understand what it means to be underestimated. That is valuable knowledge for a teacher. Takeshi considered this. I suppose so. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, two beings from vastly different worlds who had somehow found common ground. The next cohort arrives in 2 weeks, Morgan said. I hear there will be more humans this time. 12 of them. Command is expanding human recruitment. They will need an instructor who understands them. I suppose they will. Morgan nodded once and departed, leaving Takeshi alone in the bay. 2 weeks later, the new cohort arrived. 12 humans among 40 other recruits, just as Morgan had predicted. They looked nervous, uncertain, probably fed the same incomplete information that had shaped expectations for the first human recruits. Vorak assembled them in Formation Bay 7, and Takeshi stood beside him in the assistant instructor position he was still getting accustomed to. Vorak surveyed the new recruits with his characteristic expression of aggressive disappointment. Welcome to Forge 7, Vorak announced. You are here to become warriors. Some of you have advantages. Natural strength, enhanced reflexes, biological weapons. And some of you. His eyes swept across the human contingent. Some of you appear to have no advantages whatsoever. The human recruits shifted uncomfortably. Takeshi recognized that discomfort. He had felt it 12 weeks ago. Appearances, Vorak continued, his voice carrying a new edge that had not been present in Takeshi's cohort, are frequently deceptive. Assistant Instructor Reeves, please demonstrate. Takeshi walked to one of the new reinforced training posts. He wrapped his hands around it and squeezed with practiced ease. The measurement rings flared through their spectrum into the deep crimson that indicated forces exceeding 2,000 units. He held the pressure steady, making the post groan under the strain but not breaking it. Controlled demonstration rather than destructive one. He released the post and turned to face the shocked recruits. Humans, Vorak said into the stunned silence, are not weak. They are merely different. This is the first lesson you will learn here. Do not mistake difference for deficiency. The being standing next to you who looks soft might be strong in ways you do not recognize. The opponent you dismiss might be the one who defeats you. The human recruit stood straighter. Takeshi watched their expressions shift from apprehension to something approaching hope. Vorak continued his opening address, but Takeshi was not really listening anymore. He was thinking about perspective, about assumptions, about how the galaxy had looked at humans and seen weakness because they were measuring strength with the wrong instruments. The assessment had been incomplete, not wrong, exactly, but severely limited by the assumptions built into its framework. Humans were weak by certain metrics in certain conditions, but metrics and conditions were not universal truths. They were tools, and tools could be as wrong as the hands that wielded them. Takeshi smiled slightly, a private expression that no one else noticed. 12 weeks ago, he had been the entertainment, the obvious failure, the representative of a species that did not belong. Now he was the instructor, the example, the proof that belonging was more complicated than initial impressions suggested. The galaxy, it turned out, still had things to learn about humans. Takeshi intended to make sure those lessons were thorough, educational, and occasionally involved broken training equipment. After all, some lessons required dramatic demonstration. The training post behind him continued to display its elevated force readings, the measurement rings slowly fading from crimson back to their neutral blue. Standard equipment now. Rated for human use. A small change in the grand scheme of galactic military infrastructure. But small changes, Takeshi reflected, had a way of adding up to something significant. He turned his attention back to the cohort, watching Vorak systematically dismantle the new recruit's confidence in preparation for building it back stronger. The familiar routine, the necessary process. Somewhere in that cohort, humans were learning what it meant to be underestimated, and then prove the estimates wrong. Learning what Takeshi had learned, what future human recruits would continue learning. The galaxy had assumed humans were weak. That assumption, like the original training posts, had proven insufficiently robust when subjected to actual force. And that, Takeshi thought with quiet satisfaction, was the most human thing of all. Being underestimated was not the problem. Staying underestimated was simply a matter of waiting for the right moment to demonstrate otherwise. The right moment, and perhaps the right training post. Behind him, the reinforced equipment stood silent and intact, ready for the next demonstration, the next lesson, the next recruit, who would learn that weakness was often just strength, waiting to be properly understood.